I tracked every single dollar I spent for 90 days straight. No exceptions, no that one doesn't count, no rounding down. And by day 47, I found $6,200 I couldn't account for. Not stolen, not fraud, just gone. Spent by a version of me operating on autopilot. And that number is what finally made me understand my own money mindset and why almost nobody actually knows where their money goes, no matter how good they think they are with cash. If you've ever looked at your bank account and thought, I don't remember spending that much, this video is going to feel uncomfortably familiar. Stick around because by the end, I'm going to show you exactly what changed once I could actually see my own spending and the system that replaced it. Here's how this started. It wasn't some New Year's resolution. It was an overdraft notice, $54 on a Tuesday for an account I genuinely believed had $400 in it. I make decent money. I pay my bills on time. I don't think of myself as bad with finances. So that overdraft didn't just annoy me, it scared me. Because if I was that wrong about $400, what else was I wrong about? So I did something slightly obsessive. I tracked every transaction for 90 days. Every coffee, every subscription, every "it's just $5" purchase. I wrote down the amount, the category, and this part mattered more than I expected, how I felt right before I bought it. Stressed, bored, celebrating, tired. I wanted to see not just what I spent, but why. Weeks 1 through 4 were the setup phase, and this is where most people quit, by the way. It's tedious. There's a spreadsheet, there's a notes app full of half-legible receipts, and there's a nagging voice telling you this is a waste of time. I almost quit twice in the first 10 days. But it's also where the first real pattern showed up, and it wasn't the one I expected. I thought my problem was going to be something dramatic. Impulse electronics, expensive dinners, the usual suspects people blame. It wasn't. My biggest category by a wide margin was what I started calling invisible spending. Small, recurring charges that never registered as spending in my brain because no single one of them felt significant. A subscription I forgot I had. A food delivery app fee that felt like nothing because it was never the total, just the tip on top of the total. A buy now, pay later plan split into 4 payments that none of them ever triggered the part of my brain that says, wait, that's expensive. I want to break this down a bit more because invisible spending sounds vague until you see the actual receipts. 3 separate streaming subscriptions I hadn't opened in over a month, totaling $34. A grocery delivery service with a $6.99 fee I'd stopped noticing entirely. It just felt like part of the grocery bill now. 2 free trials that quietly converted to paid plans I never used. None of these individually would make anyone's top 10 list of financial mistakes. Together, they were the single largest category in my entire 90 days. By the end of week 4, invisible spending alone added up to $890. Not one big purchase, 40, 50 small ones. And here's the thing, I could not have told you that number before I tracked it. I would have guessed maybe $200. This is where I started paying attention to the psychology of money instead of just the math of it. Because the math wasn't actually the problem. I know how to subtract. The problem was that my brain wasn't logging small transactions as real spending. There's a name for this, mental accounting. The tendency to treat money differently depending on how it's categorized instead of just seeing it as one shared pool. $5 here doesn't feel connected to $5 there, even though it's coming out of the same account. Your brain runs separate ledgers. Mine sure did. Weeks 5 through 8 is where it got personal, because this is when the emotional spending patterns showed up, and I couldn't hide from them anymore. I had a rough week at work. A project fell apart, and I felt like it was partly my fault. That week, I spent $340 more than my average. Not on anything I needed. New shoes I didn't need, a dinner out I didn't plan, a treat-yourself mentality that felt earned in the moment and made 0 cents 2 days later when I looked at the receipt total. I want to be honest about something here because I think it matters. Knowing about stress spending and actually catching yourself doing it in real time are 2 different skills. I know the concept.
I've probably explained it in a video before this one, and I still did it because the tracking wasn't the fix itself. Awareness came first, but awareness alone didn't stop the behavior. It just made the behavior visible, which weirdly is still progress. You can't fix what you can't see.
Around this point, I started talking to other people about their own tracking experiments, partly because I wanted to know if my numbers were unusual or completely normal. That's when I heard about Marcus. Marcus is a project manager, mid-30s, and he ran his own version of this experiment after his wife pointed out they'd saved almost nothing in 2 years, despite both having solid incomes. His number wasn't $6,200. His was $14,000, over 6 months, not 3. And when he broke it down, almost half of it, around $6,500, came from a single category: social spending. Dinners with friends where he insisted on covering the bill. He bought concert tickets because everyone else was going. Trips he said yes to because saying no felt worse than the cost. Marcus told me something that stuck with me. He said, "I wasn't buying things. I was buying belongings." And once he saw that pattern in black and white in his own spreadsheet, he couldn't unsee it. That's identity spending. Money spent to reinforce who you believe you are or who you want other people to think you are. Generous friend, fun couple, the person who never says no to plans. It's not irrational, it's just expensive, and it's invisible until you track it. I also heard from a colleague, Eve, after I mentioned what I was doing. She'd done something similar the year before, but only for one category, her online shopping. She capped her tracking to 30 days and found $1,100 in returns she'd paid for but never actually returned, just let sit in a closet with the tags on. Her number is smaller than mine or Marcus's, but the pattern is identical. Money that leaves quietly, in a category that felt harmless in the moment. Between my invisible spending, Marcus's identity spending, and Eve's abandoned returns, a pattern started forming that I think applies to almost everyone. The spending that hurts you the most financially is rarely the spending that feels the most significant in the moment. The big purchases, the ones people feel guilty about, a vacation, a new couch, those are usually planned. You think about them, you justify them consciously. It's the unconscious spending, the stuff that never gets a second thought, that actually drains the account. By week 8, my running total of unaccounted for spending had climbed to just over $5,000. I remember sitting with that number and feeling something closer to grief than guilt. Not because I did anything wrong exactly, but because I realized how much of my financial life had been happening without me. I was earning money consciously and spending it unconsciously, and those two things had never been in the same room together until this experiment forced them to be. Weeks 9 through 12 is where things actually shifted, and I want to be specific about what changed, because I became more mindful isn't useful advice. Here's what actually happened. First, I stopped tracking every transaction manually and switched to a system that did it automatically, because by week 9 I already had the awareness I needed, and manual tracking has a shelf life before it becomes its own source of avoidance. I set up what I now think of as a 6-bucket structure, and I want to walk through all 6, because the names matter almost as much as the numbers. Bucket 1, essentials, rent, utilities, groceries, the non-negotiables. Bucket 2, invisible spending, now a named, budgeted line item instead of a hidden one, capped at a fixed amount so it can't quietly expand again. Bucket 3, social spending, Marcus's category, given its own monthly number, so saying yes to plans means guessing whether I can afford it. Bucket 4, savings, automated and untouched. Bucket 5, a guilt-free fun fund, genuinely guilt-free, because it's already been accounted for, which removes the emotional tax that used to come with every small purchase. Bucket 6, a buffer for the stuff that doesn't fit anywhere else, so one unexpected expense doesn't blow up the whole system. The invisible spending category was the most important one, honestly, because giving it a name and a number took away the power to hide. Second, and this is the part that actually moved the needle, I put a 24-hour rule on anything in the identity spending zone. Not restrictions, not no, just a delay. If a friend suggested dinner somewhere expensive, I said yes, but I didn't pay for it in my head until the next day, after the social pressure of the moment had faded.
Almost every time I still went, but about a third of the time I chose a cheaper option once the emotional urgency wore off. That's the present bias at work, the tendency to overweight how you'll feel right now over how you'll feel later. A 24-hour delay doesn't kill present bias. It just gives your slower, more rational brain a chance to catch up to your fast, emotional one.
Third, I automated my savings the same week I got my paycheck, before I could spend it away. This isn't a new idea. Pay yourself first is decades-old advice, but doing it after I'd seen my own invisible spending pattern hit differently. I wasn't automating out of discipline. I was automating because I just watched myself fail at discipline for 8 straight weeks and needed the system to do the work my willpower clearly wasn't going to do. By day 90, here's where the numbers landed. Total unaccounted, unconscious spending across the full 3 months, $6,200. Once I built the 6-bucket system and gave every dollar a job, my invisible spending dropped by 70% in the final month alone. Not because I was trying harder, but because there was nowhere left for it to hide. My savings rate, which had been inconsistent at best before this started, held steady for the first time in over a year. But the number isn't actually the point of this video, and I want to say that clearly, because I know it's tempting to walk away thinking, I need to find my $6,200. You might not have one. You might have 600 or 16,000, or something closer to Eve's 1,100 in quiet, forgotten returns. The number is personal. The pattern isn't. The pattern is this. Almost every person who thinks they're bad with money isn't actually bad at math. They're bad at visibility. Your brain is not built to track dozens of small transactions and hold them against your actual account balance in real time. Nobody's is. That's not a character flaw. It's just how attention works. The fix was never going to be try harder to remember. The fix was building a system that didn't require me to remember anything at all. If there's one thing I'd tell someone starting this today, it's don't aim for perfect tracking. Aim for honest tracking. Even if it's ugly, even if week 1 makes you feel a little sick to your stomach, that discomfort is information. It's your brain finally seeing what it's been doing in the dark. And once you can see it, you can actually decide what to do about it, instead of finding out by accident the way I did, with a $54 overdraft on a Tuesday I still remember more clearly than I'd like to. So, if this made you want to check your own numbers, that's the whole point. Start small. Track 1 week honestly before you judge yourself for what you find. And if you want the exact 6-bucket breakdown I use now, let me know in the comments. I'll walk through the full system in a follow-up.